There is no road. We make the path as we go. When we reach the end, when we think we've reached the end, we actually are at the beginning. And the longest journey that I will ever make is the journey to the heart of the person next to me.
Hi, this is Clay Boykin, and I am in search of the new compassionate male. Today, my producer, Dennis Tardan, and I had the opportunity to visit with Dr. Karambu Ringera, founder of International Peace Initiatives, located in Meru, Kenya. I have had the opportunity to work with Dr. Karambu over the past couple of years and have grown to love and respect her as a person and how she shows up in the world. Dr. Karambu is an empowering leader with a powerful message. I invite you to listen.
Hello, world. It's me, Dennis, and today we, Clay, you and I have the pleasure of hosting one of our heroes, Dr. Karambu. Karambu, it's so lovely to hear you. Clay, would you please introduce and tell us what you're doing today?
Yes, Dennis, thank you. Karambu and I met through the Gender Equity and Reconciliation International program. And getting to know Karambu has been remarkable. We'll learn about what she's doing. I'm not going to go into that. But I've had the opportunity to work with her, and she's very special to me.
And me too. I had the pleasure, Karambu, of interviewing you and talking a little bit about your life journey and what you're doing here on the planet. Here we are in July of 2020. And the world has changed so much since we last saw you just a few months ago in the United States. Can you give us a sense of what is going on the ground as you're seeing it there, and then we can talk a little bit about and give some context about the home that you have there, the children that you're feeding and working with, the women that you're working with in Kenya.
Thank you so much, Clay and Dennis, for having me on your podcast tonight, this morning, depending on where you are. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you, to see you again after our world has changed. Because
Yes.
I totally believe something has shifted and things have changed. My name is Dr. Karambu Ringera, like you had in the introduction.
Yes.
And I am the founder and president of an organization known as International Peace Initiatives. At International Peace Initiatives, we believe that peace is not merely the absence of war, it's when people have access to resources to help them meet their basic needs and live lives of dignity. We work with women, in particular women who've been infected or affected by HIV and AIDS. We work with children who have become orphans because of HIV and AIDS or because of poverty or violence in their lives. And we work with these so-called vulnerable groups. And my learning from working with them is really that except the society makes people vulnerable because of the namings and markings that we give people. No one is helpless and hopeless. And when people have what they need, they can actually transform their lives and they can thrive. And so I don't help people, I work with people, because no one needs help, because no one can help another unless one wants to be helped or supported. So I work with people to find who they are through a dialogue process and a systems thinking mind and heart set that looks at people as whole, complete, pure, and enough. We don't victimize people. We invite people to recognize the naming in the victimization that society has put in certain words in the languages that we use and things like that. We invite people to understand that and to choose to define themselves, to name themselves. And through that process, I have found that when especially so-called vulnerable women know who they are, they take off. I mean, they just take off. I like to say that the tragedy of a people is when they don't know who they are. Because even defined within a disease like HIV and AIDS, when people understand they are not the disease, when they understand they are bigger than the disease, it totally changes their worldview. It totally changes how they see themselves and themselves in the world. And nothing is impossible at that point. So our work is about regenerating who we are, because regeneration for me is returning something to its former essence. My former essence is knowing who I am, because I wasn't born the way we've been taught, that we are born in sin, we are born in all these things. I know I am a gift to the world, and I came pure and whole and complete. And my business here is to find that wholeness before it was drowned in my socialization, and to be able to then reclaim who I am meant to be and live that. I call that interbeing, you know. I'll talk a little bit about Utu. You had that, the African philosophy of Ubuntu, I am because you are. And I say Ubuntu is being human, but Utu is about how I be human. Utu is the humaneness in my being human. And regeneration is about cultivating my Utu-ness, my humaneness, so that I fully be human by stepping into my humaneness, which is based on the divine essence in which I am embedded or embraced in this life.
Karambu, I wanted to ask, you started the school there north of Nairobi in Maru, Kenya, right? How long has that been since you started? I called it a school. I make that mistake. It's a home. How long has that been?
Yeah, and it's amazing because everybody calls it a school. And I guess it's a school because even in the drawing of the building, whoever drew it called it a school, and I was like, it's a home. But then everybody calls it a school. So I'm getting to start listening to why it's a school, because I start to see how it's a school. But we've been here for 10 years. We started the home in 2009, and actually that is when we moved in August, on the 23rd of August 2009. That is when we moved at the home. So August this year will be 11 years. However, working with the women started in 2003.
When one of the things that I find so profound about what you're doing is that you are having a human community here in the home, so that you have a community that's not only contained, but you also get an opportunity to look inside of the hearts and to see how they can bring forward, how each of us brings forward this essence of who we are. So I look at us here in the United States, in the richest country in the world so far, and I see the materialism. I see the same hunger for finding ourselves even in the richest and the most prosperous of communities, that same hunger is the hunger that you're working on right there.
Exactly. In our work, there's the land that the community gave us to build the children's home, and they really gave us a piece of wasteland. It's rocky. It was rocky. It was you couldn't grow anything there. And through working with the women and the children, who, because of the women's status and the children's status as orphans, are forms of human wasteland in the perspective of the world today. And in working with the land and transforming it into a large, beautiful home for the children right now, and the transformation that I've seen within the women and the children, it is true, there are different forms of thirst. Wealth, prosperity is not only in the form of money. For example, in our tradition, when a person is hungry and they come to my land and they find a ripe banana, if they sit there and eat it, it's okay. We will never say a person stole our bananas if he sat there or she sat there and ate because she was hungry. In our community, we say that even if I live in a 20-room house and the person next to me lives in a slum, then I'm not prosperous, I'm not wealthy, because wealth is not an individual thing. Wealth is a communal endeavor. I cannot be wealthy when there's someone else who is sleeping next to my gate, who is hungry, who does not have food. So the African concept of a wholeness within the community is really beautiful. And so the hunger that you see in your communities in the States is one aspect. But then in the capitalist modern worldview, we have defined what is wealth and health using the wrong parameters, because it's not about money, it's not about status, because of the hierarchies that we have created as a society. So there are people who are up here for whatever measure that we use, and stuff like that. So the measure of happiness, for example, prosperity within the African communities was very different. And there's something that we really value. Like, you can't come and give me something and then ask me to give it to the children and ask the kids to run and compete for it. And whoever reaches a certain point before everybody else will get whatever, everybody walks together and they go and sit around a circle, and each one shares the item that is in the basket. There's no competition, there's cooperation. So what I'll just say is that the thirst is the same, because what is within us, that which calls from within us, is the same. The context within which we live and the material stuff may be different. However, from within, the essence of that which calls us into life is the same. I also say that we think that there's a life that we are living. That is why materialism is so important to us, because there's a life that I'm living. I have a big house, I have 10 cars, I have this and the other. However, I believe that there's no life that Karambu is living, but there's a life that has been calling to be lived through me.
Yes.
And my business is to work out what is this life that is calling to be lived within me or through me. And when I discover that, when I find out what that is, it totally changes the way I see the world, the way I listen to what that calling is, and the way that I be in the world with that life is calling, the life that is calling to be lived through me.
You know, what I love about what you said, Karambu, there is so much, but this, can you talk a little bit about your journey on how you came to this awareness that you are, that there is a life that is waiting to be lived by you and to live that best life? Could you talk a little bit about getting to that place? Because you weren't born there. There was a process of getting there in your own soul evolution.
Yeah, it's been a journey, and through listening to people, through reading, through my own lived experiences, I came to understand a lot of things. But one of the things that has really impacted the way that I think is being in this life as a woman born in Africa and who had the blessing and opportunity to study outside my country in South Africa, and then I went to the US. And patriarchy as a system through which I lived left a marking in my life, because I saw the life that women were living. For example, when I was very young, there's a woman who used to come through my mother's door every night at around, now I figure it's around 9 p.m. And every night she used to hit my mother's door, and she'd run right across the house and hide. She would hide at the back. And when I grew up, I asked my mom, what was that about that woman who came to our home every night? I was very young, but I don't forget that woman. Because soon after she arrived, my mom would tell us, like to be quiet. And soon after, there would be a voice at the door, a male voice, asking my mother something. And then I would hear the receding footsteps of that man. And later on, I asked my mom what that was about, and she told me that that man used to beat his wife every night. And I would be like, isn't she a grown-up person? Why would someone be beating her every night, And so many other things that I observed happening to women. And I used to wonder, how can I, avoid this? I mean, because that's not the kind of life I want to live. Yes. And later on, through very many experiences, I realized that patriarchy is a system that privileges men.
Yes.
And if you live within a patriarchal society as a woman, you are less than, you're below everything else. So for a man, there's his children, the cows, the goats, the car, whatever they own, and at the bottom is the woman.
Yes.
And I'll tell you a shocking thing that my grandfather said in the hearing of my mother when she was young. And my grandfather said, if it wasn't for the fact that a woman gives birth to a child and we see it, of what is she worth? I was like, what? I mean, that was like shocking. Like, you can imagine in my mind where that took me. It's like, yes. What's wrong with being a woman? And it reminded me of something that Terry said during the podcast the other day that I was listening to about castration. That for men to be feminine, it's like they feel castrated like a woman. And I was like, what? I don't feel castrated. I don't even define myself by that, but then I
Yes.
realized that depending on where you're standing and what you're using as your measure for looking at the other. So if a man looks at me as his opposite, then that which they have and I
Yes.
don't have is who I am.
Mm.
And when I had those words, I started thinking about, I don't experience myself as castrated. I experience myself
Yes.
as whole, complete, and beautiful person, complete, you know. So I understood the importance of being present to the context within which people live and
Yes.
understanding socialization and programming, because I say the systems within which we live have programmed us in certain ways. We think our own thoughts. We think we live our own beliefs, but we live someone else's story. That is why I like talking about creating new stories, because to create a new story comes from shedding, understanding who I am and what stops me, and understanding all those systems and how they have impacted my life, and recognizing the misnaming that I have given myself from the misnaming that the community has given me. Because who I say I am is based on what people say I am, my parents, my siblings, my friends, and on and on. What I say, who I say I am from the namings of these people. And then all the other socialization stories that I've had about women, about whatever. And so I realized that until the process of understanding myself is understanding those systems, how they have stopped me, and how I myself have stopped myself because of believing in these other people's stories. So my creation of a new story every moment is about shedding the naming, the marking, and being present to every time, being present to who do I say I am? Who do I say I am? And reminding myself every moment of who I am, because the world is standing there waiting to tell me who I'm not. You know who I am, which is who I'm not. So I have to always remember to go back to who I am. And when you shed the layers of the namings and markings and you get to the bottom where there's nothing else, it's at that space, that place, that then I started figuring who I am, who am I now that all these other layers have been peeled off. It's a journey of dialoguing with myself and peeling all these layers. Because when I got to that place, and I'm telling you, it's a process that one goes through in tears, in frustration, disappointment, and things like that. Because for me to come to that point, I had gotten to a point where every day for about a year and a half, I dreamt that I had a wound on my leg. Every day, I dreamt that I had a wound. And one day, I decided, hey, let me find what is in this wound, like what's wrong with my leg. And I'm telling you, when I opened up the bandage, which was like so dirty because it looked like the wound was so bad, when I opened the bandage, there was no wound. And I understood that that wound was my woundedness from the stories that I had allowed to define who I am. And from that point, I knew two things. I can heal myself. And I can find, I need to understand who I am so that I can shed all those layers of misnaming myself, if you see what I mean.
I do.
So it's through those journeys. And the reason why I dreamt that wound was because I was going through a very terrible phase in my life, which is a long story, probably can be shared another time. But when I discovered that I had allowed the namings and markings of the society to define who I was, when I opened that wound, it was like a cleansing. It was like a knowing. It was a knowing. It was a deep knowing that, wow, this is not who I am. And so shortly around that time, I had read a book and one of the things that I remember about that book was saying, there is no road. We make the path as we go. When we reach the end, when we think we've reached the end, we actually are at the beginning. And the longest journey that I will ever make is the journey to the heart of the person next to me. That came with the process of forgiving the people who had led me to that place of thinking that I had a wound on my leg. Because once I understood what was going on, then I had to work on the process of forgiving myself and forgiving the other people. It's a long process, but once I got there, it was like freedom. That is what I call freedom, because I freed myself of societal conditioning and stuff like that. And I started really delving deep into who did I then want to be. I started thinking about who did God meant me? Who did God mean me to be? Or, if English is not my first language, so I dance with it. So what is the highest self that is meant for me? And that is who I want to be every day. That's the beingness, the utu-ness that I want to live every day. Yeah.
Clay, you were talking about first of all, let me just say, wow. Okay, thank you. Now, next, I want to recognize, Karambu, the grace that we get an opportunity to be able to share with you. I need to do that because my soul is just resonating so deeply with everything that you've said. Clay, you, in search of the new compassionate male, we understand that the patriarchy is the toxic masculinity, is the evolution. Can you talk about what that is and how that is evolving, devolving, and then evolving into where we're going?
Yes. Gosh, what I've been learning along the way is that the patriarchy's wounded both men and women, that we're all wounded by the patriarchy. And that realization started to really resonate when I began working with the Gender Equity and Reconciliation International organization. They, for 28 years, have been working on this, bringing women and men together in a safe and sacred setting to enable them to bear their wounds out, not to compare them, but to honor them and to recognize that those wounds are common, are what we have in common, that we're both wounded by the patriarchy, and then to be able to build a relationship from there, different than what we've seen in the past. So I've learned that through that program, very rich program, and I've witnessed it within our men's circle over the past 8 years. Men coming in carrying all sorts of wounds, and in a little bit different twist, so many of the men come in the way that I started out. I didn't trust other men. The competition set up by the patriarchy. It's dog eat dog, right? Climb the ladder and dog eat dog. Step on the other person. Yeah. And I realized that I was getting at a point in life where, for me to grow, like Karambu says, to find out who I really am and to show up, I had to be able to break that mistrust and begin to form that relationship. I thought, Karambu, you said something about the longest journey. And I thought you were going to say from my head to my heart, but you said the longest journey is from my heart to your heart. I'd never heard that before. And you're right. And that's what we've witnessed in our men's circle. I'm realizing you've hit the nail on the head for me, that we're beginning to connect and learn how to speak with one another on a deeper level to learn one another. I've said it before, Dennis, that, we have 25 guys in a circle on a Monday night. There's over 1,000 life years of experience sitting right there. And there's something that each one of us can learn from one another. Not that we're there to teach anybody anything, but we're there to show up and for us to learn from others' experiences. And you've witnessed it, Dennis, the transformation that happens when men are in a safe space.
Absolutely.
And that's unique and so counter to the toxicity that's out in the patriarchal system.
We have that, and Karambu, when you see these children, when you see these young men growing rather than competing, actually growing and being part of that more of a balanced, can you talk about that, please?
It's beautiful to watch kids, some who came from the street, some who had been abandoned and left to die, actually come to a point of saying, I may be an orphan, but I'm not the one who is dead. That's a recognition of they have a life that is calling to be lived through them. It's not their fault that they don't have parents and that their parents passed on. And now they have a responsibility to live their lives fully because they recognize that it's a gift that they've been given. So what are they choosing? What are they going to choose to do with this gift? And so for me, I say that I hold a space for the kids to see who they are and to choose to step into that and live it every day. And it's a huge dance that we do with the kids, molding, working to mold who they want to become. And as you know, bringing up kids, there's so much stuff that is happening all the time. But when a kid says that I was given a punishment, and I value when I am given a punishment when I have done wrong, they were saying they've never been punished wrongly when they haven't done something wrong. And this is a little guy is saying this, and I'm like, yeah, that is it. Recognizing, taking responsibility of the errors and the good that you're creating every minute.
Karambu, one of the things that I loved about what you said earlier was that we are already complete. That we are complete, that we're not here to add something. Actually, we're here to subtract what the world has told me about Dennis and what the world has put on to there. And that is what I see you doing with the children, and why it's such an extraordinary and global mission.
Yeah, I feel sometimes like the conditioning that we get from our society really makes us waste a lot of time instead of living our gifts and just doing the beauty that we came to do here on earth. It's like now you're born beautiful, whole, and then you're submerged into this societal, whatever, and then now you have to resurrect yourself again. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I think, since I was brought up Christian, I think that if people stopped and thought about the story of Jesus and the things that he went, the story of his life is the story of what society does to us, and the call is to get out of this stuff and find life. To find life for me is reconnect with the divine, the goodness that is within me, because I believe that the world's template is good. That is what I believe. I know there are a lot of ugly things that are happening out there, but I believe that the template is good, and I choose where I'm going to stand on that template. If I want to look at a glass of water and always think it's half empty, that's my choice. I choose to look at a half empty glass of water and say it is half full, and my business is to fill the other half with whatever that I need to do. So there's a calling there to really be aware of, how do I want to be in this world? The template is good. How do I want to do the dance and to be the gift that I'm meant to be in this world, in this life?
And that's my experience with you, Clay. When I Karambu, when I met Clay, I was seriously, I had been searching for many years and really having this story that I had told myself that I could be very comfortable with around women, and I was very close to women, but I just could not trust or be a part of the idea with men, and it caused a great deal of internal consternation with me. And one of the things that has been so healing in this, and as we're talking about In Search of the New Compassionate Male, it's how do we have within us, within each of us, we have both male and female, and we have these part, and the part of that I am looking to grow, the place that has the largest capacity for growth with me is the maleness, is the compassionate male, and what this might look like. And Clay, you're talking about this as being a new archetype, right? Could you talk a little about that and how that might look in the world?
What I'm learning, because I don't have the answer, but what I'm learning along the way is what I was referring to earlier about the wounds and what have you. But the archetypes, the king, warrior, magician, lover, that Robert Gillette and Robert Moore brought forward based on the Jungian work. Those have served a purpose, and they do serve a purpose in helping men, young men, and men of all ages to point to what it is to be a king or a warrior, a magician, or a lover. But what I am coming to learn is that there's something additional to that emerging from those archetypes is another archetype. And that's what I believe, is that the new compassionate male is a new emerging archetype. It doesn't take anything away from the others, but this is a drawing forward point that within every person, regardless if they're king or warrior, magician or lover, there's a part of them that's innate. It's in their DNA that is love expressed as compassion. The mother reaching out for the child with no regard for herself to save the child. I've said it before, the Marine that throws himself on the grenade to save his brothers. He didn't think about that. That's the most basic human condition, is that caring for another person. And that I could live my life at that place without all the distractions that Karambu that you were talking about, to live that place of that spontaneous care for another person. knowing that we're doing that together.
Well, I want to jump in there on that, Clay, because I see you doing it. And Karambu, what you said is that it's process and not product. It's the journey and not the destination. And this is, we are works in progress. And as you are doing it, as I'm seeing you do it, and Clay, as I see you do it, and the people that I'm interacting with, and as I see myself do it, the process unfolds, but it unfolds differently than I might have thought if I were trying to program it. It's much more beautiful and much more nuanced and much, much deeper and richer than I would have stopped short. It's that extraordinary.
And actually, what you just said reminded me, in trying to work out understanding patriarchy as one of the systems and how it has impacted both women and men, through the Gender Equity and Reconciliation International work that Clay talked about, and that's actually where we met. Mm-hmm. That helped me understand that system. And I used to think that it has harmed only women, but now I understood how it has harmed men too. And in Clay's work, I understood, when I understood the woundedness that patriarchy as a system has brought to men and women, it kills something. Systems kill something in people so that they lose who they are, so that they can hear the system rather than hear themselves. And in Clay's work, I see the rupturing, the opening of what is that missing link. And it is the finding that the patriarchy has told men they are a certain way, and so they don't show feelings. They are not supposed to, all those things that have buried the feminine in them. Just like I, as a woman, have to recognize the masculine in me, so does a man have to find the feminine in them to be balanced, to be whole. And that's how the moving from the mind to the heart, that journey happens. Because in this heart space dance, there's the feelings that they have been told you don't have any feelings, but they know they do have those feelings. So in Clay's work, I find amazing in that I have watched my boys, my young men who've gone through it. And I'm telling you, it has totally changed their lives. Even though they've gone through the passage of the rite of passage through circumcision, and they've been taught how to be men in this place, it has, attending Clay's workshop here in Meru, I don't know, softened. It brought another light in their eye of recognizing the importance of loving themselves, that they are worth loving, and that their business is not always to lord it over others, that there's beauty in listening and working cooperatively with others. And there's also beauty in discovering the feminine in you. It totally turned around their world. And so the importance of this work is in, like creating that, linking the dots, and for a man to emerge whole and complete and enough, also in finding who they really are, not from the namings and markings of the society, but from, and these young men still have these conversations amongst themselves, and always talk amongst themselves when one of them is being funny or something like that, and bringing them back to understanding what to be a man really looks like. It is not in the wearing the masks that they've been wearing and walking around with. It's in opening, being open to breaking open that mask and to walk in your true authenticity every moment of your life. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's so beautiful to watch these young men. Today, one of them told me that because they opened up travel in Kenya with COVID-19, yesterday, the president opened the lockdown places. And so he said, I want to go home and talk with other young people my age and work with them to transform their lives the way mine has been transformed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only reason why he wanted to go home, is so that he can talk to people in his village. So cracking open that beautiful softness that is in every man, that has been beautiful to watch in my young men here. So thank you, Clay. You totally changed the world.
It was so fascinating. It was so fascinating working with them. What we, I guess, established trust with one another, and that we could open up. I shared my story and showed that there's to be vulnerable, to speak one's mind with an open heart, as Brene Brown says. For them to witness me doing that, modeling the way in a safe and sacred space, said it's okay. And once they began speaking, every one of them, they have it in them. They have it in them. And I said, guys, through your rites of passage, you've been trained to be a warrior, and you've got your sword or your, in one hand, but you get your other hand tied behind your back. What kind of warrior can you be? To be a complete man, to be a complete male, sure, you have to have perhaps a sword or something of that nature in one hand, but you have to have the hand of compassion in the other, so that together you can show up in the right way at the right time for the right reason. And they resonated with that.
Absolutely.
And if it would not have been so powerful if when you left, that the message left with you. That was what I love about what you did is that you showed up and you walked and you showed your vulnerability. You opened up and you said, I am not here. What do I have?
Well, I said, first thing I said to him, I said, I'm a privileged white Western male. Who am I to come to your country and think that I can teach you anything? I'm here, sure, to share what I have, but primarily to learn from you, so I can put into context what I have. And so together we can learn from each other. And I tell you, Dennis, I came away, it was so rewarding. I grew so much during that time that I was there. And I grew that growth was because of those young men. The energy that they brought up to the surface. Mm-hmm. They're showing their wholeness and completeness. What a gift.
And your willingness to grow.
Yes, absolutely.
Your willingness to go over there open-minded and open-hearted, because I saw you a couple of days before, and I saw you right after you returned, and there was a healing and a growth in you. It was like, wow, that was something. And that's why we've had many conversations about the experience and this of you doing that.
Dennis, there's something else I also tell you about Clay being in Kenya. Because a lot of Westerners come to Kenya to teach us they come to Kenya with their story, which they want us to make our story, because that is what development is, And they saw a person who is white, who claims his white privilege, because he told them he is a white privilege man. He owns his privilege. He's not hiding it and looking like, I'm coming to help you, stuff like that. He said, I can't teach you anything unless there's something I learned from you, so that then I can share what I have as you share what you have, and together we create something that is neither yours nor mine, but when we meet here in the middle, we create something amazingly new and unique, and that serves us both. So most people come to Kenya to come and help, and they don't learn because they come with the assumption that there's nothing to learn from Africa, and it's their loss. Because, like you said, Dennis, you saw the change in Clay, and our work has actually been about working with people like Clay, who know that there's no one that needs help. We work together because each one of us is going to be served by the gift that each one of us bring to the table. And that is the thing that aid and development must discover for it to make a difference, not only in places like Africa, but to the people who bring it, because the donor world is very racist. Mm-hmm. The aid world is very racist. And until the decolonization of our minds and of the donor happens, we will continue perpetuating dependency. We'll perpetuate looking at the outside as where everything good comes from.
Yes.
And in Clay's sharing and showing up, and in the work that we do, the thing is to show that transformation comes from within me. Nothing good comes from outside. Always has to come from within me. And it's from that place of looking within me as a person and looking within my country and seeing the good that is there. And when someone comes, they're coming for us to work out something that is unique, because their goodness and our goodness meet somewhere. And that creates an amazing, amazing, beautiful transformation for each one.
So true. Mm.
Thank you, Karambu. Thank you for today, for this conversation. Is there anything that any of us that is still here that is left unsaid for today on your heart, Karambu?
There's something that I wanted to share, because I read it somewhere recently. And this is what I would like to leave everybody with. And I'll read it because I just discovered it, so I haven't yet memorized it. But remember, I said, what is the life calling to be lived in me? And I found this statement from someone called Andre Matthias. So her words are, what is the future that stands in need of you in order to bring it into reality? What is the future that stands in need of me in order to bring it into reality? That's the invitation and the ending with which I would like to end this amazing conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Clay. Thank you, Karambu. And we all shall see you next time.